says a select group from Congress has been given access to the unredacted Epstein files, which reference our president far, far more than anyone could have imagined.
Well, he said that I spent time on Jeffrey Epstein's island. I didn't. I mean, he's a lightweight, this guy. He's a terrible, I think he's terrible. I thought he did a terrible job at the Grammys. I thought the whole Grammys.
Everyone thought it would be another late-night monologue, a few safe jokes, a couple polite chuckles, maybe a mild jab at the usual headlines. What nobody expected was a full-blown televised meltdown, because when Jimmy Kimmel decided to aim his spotlight directly at Donald Trump, something snapped. And not the studio microphone.
Files are a big deal, obviously, and a big story, a story that Donald Trump would prefer just goes away, but it won't just go away. It's salacious. It's the kind of story that makes headlines, and he knows that. So what he does is he bombards us with a dozen other crazy things to try to flood the...
Part of it is not watchable, but he was a lousy host. I'd say not as bad as Jimmy Kimmel, but pretty close. And no, he made a statement about me and Jeffrey Epstein. I have nothing to do with it.
What started as a routine comedy segment slowly turned into something far more explosive. Not a debate, not a policy breakdown, a demolition. The kind where the building looks fine from the outside until you notice the foundation quietly crumbling underneath.
You know, it's a term you hear a lot, but rarely when it is literally true. And most of all, it is so bananas that the guy who's in charge of releasing all these files and redacting all this evidence is Donald Trump's own personal defense attorney. You know, when Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts of fraud, Todd Blanche was his lawyer. Now Todd Blanche is the gatekeeper to the Epstein files.
Wait a second. Loving the video? Let's make it official. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more exciting content, because the best is yet to come. Now let's head back to the video. For years, Trump has treated late-night hosts like background noise. Annoying, sure, but ultimately irrelevant. He has sparred with comedians before. He has brushed off punchlines like they were lint on an expensive suit. But this time felt different. This time, Kimmel did not just toss a few easy jokes and move on. He dissected the brand, he poked at the ego, he challenged the myth.
How is Trump responding to that? I'll tell you how. By attacking Canada again. He's at it again. This time, he's threatening to close down a new bridge they're almost finished with that connects Windsor to Detroit. He wrote, as everyone knows, the country of Canada has treated the United States very unfairly for decades. I didn't know that, actually. They always seem pretty fair to me, but okay. Now, things are turning.
And Trump did not take it well. Now, let's be clear. Late-night comedy thrives on exaggeration. It feeds on spectacle. But what makes this particular clash fascinating is how it exposed something deeper. Because the more Kimmel leaned into the absurdity, the more Trump seemed to lean into outrage. And outrage, as we all know, is fuel.
There's only so much we can take in, so to distract us, right now one of the things he's doing is suing everybody. Now, last night, I mentioned Trump is suing the IRS that he runs for $10 billion, and that he's planning to negotiate a settlement to that suit with himself, which is just, if any other president, it would be the biggest story of their whole 4 years in office. For Trump, it doesn't even crack the top 5 this month. But so the New York Times published a story yesterday, claimed Trump has dropped his demand that Harvard, the university, pony up $200 million.
At first, it looked like classic late-night ribbing. Kimmel highlighted Trump's endless online rants, his tendency to escalate minor slights into digital wars, and the uncanny ability to turn every headline into a personal grievance. It was sharp, but controlled. The audience laughed. The rhythm felt familiar.
To the Spanish-speaking world, to culture, Bad Bunny got a bad review from our bad president, unfortunately. He wrote, the Super Bowl halftime show is absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. It makes no sense, is an affront to the greatness of America, and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching from throughout the USA and around the world. This is a man who paid off a porn star.
Then Kimmel shifted gears. Instead of just mocking the surface-level theatrics, he started pointing out the pattern. The obsession with crowd sizes, the fixation on loyalty, the endless recycling of the same talking points dressed up as fresh outrage. He framed it less like political commentary and more like performance art, a reality show that never quite ends. And that is where things got uncomfortable. Because comedy works best when it reveals something people recognize but rarely articulate. He does not merely respond to narratives, he hijacks them. Every criticism becomes a stage. Every joke becomes ammunition. He thrives in conflict. But Kimmel did something clever. Instead of engaging in a shouting match, he treated Trump's reactions as the punchline itself. He did not argue policy. He did not attempt to outrage the outrage. He simply laid out the pattern and let the audience connect the dots. And that, ironically, might have been the most devastating move of all. Because the more Trump responded online, posting, venting, lashing out, the more he validated the bit. It became a self-fulfilling sketch. Kimmel did not need to escalate. The reactions escalated themselves.
Imagine Canada is building a massive bridge between Ontario and Michigan. President Barack Hussein Obama. Is that part of his apology for the Post the other day? Or stupidly gave them a waiver so they could get around the Buy American Act. Now the Canadian government expects me as president to permit them to just take advantage of America. On top of everything else, Prime Minister Carney wants to make a deal with China, which will eat Canada alive. The first thing China will do is terminate all ice hockey being played in Canada.
Here's the fascinating part. Trump's political persona has always been built on strength, dominance, the image of a man unfazed by critics. Yet in this exchange, the optics shifted. Instead of appearing above the fray, he appeared pulled into it. Instead of towering over late-night comedians, he seemed entangled in them. And the internet noticed. Clips circulated. Reactions poured in. Supporters defended him. Critics amplified the jokes. The entire episode morphed into a case study on modern media warfare. Who actually controls the narrative? The politician with the platform, or the comedian with the audience? Kimmel, for his part, stayed surprisingly measured. That is what made it sting. He did not scream. The louder the backlash became, the bigger the spotlight grew. Ratings climbed, online engagement surged. Every furious response only expanded the reach of the original joke. In trying to shut it down, Trump effectively amplified it. This is where the story stops being about comedy and starts being about strategy. Trump has long mastered the art of dominating headlines through provocation. He understands that controversy keeps him central, but when you react to every jab, you risk reinforcing the caricature your critics paint, and that is exactly what unfolded.
And there's all this other stuff going on. Busting into the election headquarters in Georgia, arresting journalists like Don Lemon, who is here with us tonight, suddenly shutting down the Kennedy Center for 2 years, calling for nationalized elections, Trump suing the government he runs for $10 billion. My head is spinning. I guess that's the point, but my God, remember when Trump was threatening to invade Greenland? That was not even 2 weeks.
Instead of dismissing Kimmel as irrelevant, the responses elevated him. Instead of shrugging off the segment, the outrage cemented it in the news cycle. It became a loop. Kimmel jokes, Trump reacts. Reaction fuels more jokes fuel more reaction. And the audience watches the spiral in real time. Now, to be fair, political comedy has always thrived on exaggeration. It simplifies complex issues into digestible moments. It pokes, it provokes, it entertains. But this clash exposed how intertwined politics and entertainment have become. The boundaries blur, the lines dissolve. When a comedian can trigger a national conversation with a monologue, and a former president responds like a reality show rival, you are no longer watching traditional politics. You are watching performance layered on performance. What made this moment particularly sharp was not the content of the jokes. It was the optics of the reaction. Because for someone who brands himself as impervious, reacting so forcefully to a late-night host creates a crack in the armor. Strength rarely needs to shout. The more heated the responses became, the more it seemed like the jokes had hit somewhere sensitive. And in politics, perception is everything. The appearance of being rattled can matter as much as being rattled.
With his own face on a magazine, she spanked him. He's offended by the halftime. This is a guy who's okay with this being the release of the Epstein files. He's offended for the children. The MAGAverse was so hopping mad about Bad Bunny. It really is amazing how differently people can see the same thing. Half of us saw a heartwarming story of immigrants who had dreams to come to America, work hard, get married, grow up, raise families, sing, dance.
Meanwhile, viewers were left asking a bigger question. If a comedy segment can spark this level of escalation, what does that say about the political climate, about the fragility of narratives, about the power of media personalities. The exchange became symbolic of something larger, a reminder that in today's world, attention is currency, and whoever controls attention controls momentum. Kimmel played the long game. He did not need to win an argument. He only needed to set the stage. The reactions did the rest. Trump, on the other hand, faced a dilemma. Ignore it and risk looking weak to critics who claim he cannot handle mockery. Respond and risk amplifying the mockery itself. It was a lose-lose scenario disguised as a social media skirmish. And that is what made it so compelling. And politicians who underestimate that shift do so at their own risk. In the end, the question is not whether Kimmel's jokes were funny or whether Trump's responses were justified. The real question is what this says about the state of public discourse. When satire triggers strategy and outrage fuels ratings, the line between governance and entertainment becomes almost invisible.
For $200 million, now he wants $1 billion. Every post now is a ransom note from the president. And as far as Harvard goes, come on, guys, you know how this works. There's an easy way out of this. Just give him an imaginary degree of some kind. Give him an award for his magnificent brain and penis, and this all goes away. Give him, you want to know what to do? I'll tell you what to do. Give him the first annual Donald J. Trump Penis Brain Prize.
Trump did not physically lose it. There were no podiums flipped, no microphones shattered. But in the realm of optics, the moment carried weight. Because sometimes losing it is not about volume. It is about perception. It is about how the reaction lands. And this time, the reaction landed hard. Here is where the story gets even more interesting. Because once the dust from the initial clash settled, something unexpected happened. The conversation stopped being about a joke and started being about control. Who really dictates the rhythm of modern politics? The candidate with the rallies and campaign slogans, or the comedian with a desk, a camera, and a perfectly timed smirk? Kimmel did not chase the outrage. It became a case study in escalation. Because in today's media ecosystem, silence can be power, but so can spectacle. And Trump has always leaned into spectacle. The bold statement, the fiery post, the immediate counterattack. That formula has worked for him before. It energizes his base. It creates loyalty through shared indignation. It keeps him at the center of the storm. But this time, the storm felt different. Kimmel did not position himself as a political opponent. He positioned himself as a commentator observing behavior. That subtle shift matters. When someone argues with you, it feels like a contest. When someone simply describes your reactions and lets the audience laugh, it feels like exposure.
All of this, I believe, every bit of this is an effort to distract us from the fact that Trump's name, according to one of the congressmen who just reviewed the unredacted files, Jamie Raskin, says he did a search. He said Donald Trump's name appears more than 1 million times, which is a lot of, there's only 3 million pages in the whole, that's more than Harry Potter gets mentioned in all 7 Harry Potter.
And exposure stings. The more Trump pushed back, the more it reinforced the narrative Kimmel was hinting at, that the reactions themselves were predictable, that outrage had become routine, that every perceived insult triggered the same cycle. It was not just about one monologue anymore. It was about pattern recognition. Viewers began noticing how quickly things escalated, how rapidly statements turned into all-caps posts, how easily the focus shifted from policy or strategy back to personal grievance. Whether you support Trump or not, the rhythm of that response cycle is undeniable. The entire episode ballooned beyond a late-night segment into a broader cultural conversation. And that is when the power dynamic became even more visible, because the more coverage the clash received, the more it highlighted a simple truth. Entertainment and politics are now inseparable. A joke can spark a news cycle. A reaction can dominate headlines. And the boundary between governing and performing grows thinner by the day. Trump has long understood this overlap. His political style has always carried elements of showmanship, dramatic entrances, memorable slogans, high-energy rallies. He commands attention like few others can. But attention is a double-edged sword. When you command it, you also inherit every spotlight pointed your way. Kimmel knew that.
Even Donald Trump didn't watch the Kid Rock halftime show. He watched Bad Bunny. He wanted to make sure he hated him as much as he thought he would, and he did. Someone shot this video of Trump watching the game at his hotel in Palm Beach, and you can see that's the monitor. He's got a bunch of people there, and he's joined at his table by none other than, you'll see here, Senator Lindsey Graham. That is what I wish on Donald Trump. An eternity of watching football halftime shows with Lindsey Graham.
Instead of attacking Trump on policy specifics, he focused on behavior, the repetition, the intensity, the perpetual battle mode. It was less about ideology and more about psychology. And when audiences sense authenticity in satire, it resonates. The tension escalated when supporters began framing the monologue as unfair, biased, even disrespectful. Critics countered that satire is meant to challenge power. The debate expanded. What is the role of comedy in politics? Where is the line between criticism and mockery? Does reacting strongly validate the joke, or does it demonstrate strength? At this point, the narrative shifted again. It was no longer simply Trump versus Kimmel. It was a reflection of how public figures respond under pressure. He rarely lets criticism go unanswered. For his supporters, that defiance is strength. It signals refusal to bow to media elites. It reinforces the image of someone who will not be silenced. But the risk of constant counterpunching is fatigue. When every jab receives a full-force response, the intensity can blur. It can begin to look reactive rather than strategic. And in this instance, that perception gained traction. Kimmel capitalized on that shift. In subsequent segments, he did not appear flustered or defensive. He maintained composure, calm delivery, a controlled rhythm. The contrast amplified the effect. One side appeared amused, the other appeared agitated.
We're living in dog years now, and it's only going to get nuttier now that this new batch of Epstein files is out. The Distractomatic is cranked all the way up. The DOJ released 3 million pages on Friday, which sounds like a lot until you realize there is another 3 million pages that they haven't released and do not plan to ever release, even though they are required to release all of it by law. And it's important to remember the Justice Department is a completely independent agency from the White House when anyone other than Donald Trump is president. Trump put Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche in charge of the DOJ, which is kind of like the IRS hiring your mom and dad to do your tax return.
As days passed, polling conversations even touched on media presence. Analysts debated whether engaging with late-night hosts helps or hurts political momentum. Some argued that ignoring satire would starve it of oxygen. Others suggested that counterattacks energize supporters. But what remained undeniable was this. The exchange kept Trump in the spotlight for reasons outside his control. Instead of driving the narrative, he was reacting to it. Meanwhile, Kimmel's audience expanded. Curiosity draws viewers. Conflict attracts clicks. The clash turned casual observers into active participants. People who might not normally tune into late-night television found themselves watching clips just to understand the controversy. What triggers such strong responses? Why does satire sometimes provoke more intensity than direct political attacks? The answer may lie in vulnerability. Jokes bypass defenses. They simplify complex reputations into digestible caricatures. They make the powerful look human, sometimes fragile. As the cycle continued, observers began asking whether this was sustainable. Can a political figure remain perpetually reactive in a media environment designed to provoke? Or does that approach eventually dilute impact? There is no simple answer. Trump's brand defies conventional analysis. His supporters admire resilience. His critics amplify missteps. Every reaction serves someone's narrative.
Trump also doubled down on his attacks against the New York Times. He's suing them for $15 billion. He wrote, "I look forward to watching their rapidly falling circulation force them to finally close their doors." Well, hey, listen, if you really want the Times to go out of business, maybe you should just run it for them, right? I mean, it's hard to keep track, but he wants $1 billion from Harvard, $10 billion from the IRS, $15 billion from the New York Times. And these numbers, where do they even come from? It's like when a little kid guesses how much something costs. A billion, million, trillion, hundred, infinite.
But one truth remains consistent. In the battle between comedy and politics, perception often wins over substance. Kimmel did not need to win a debate. He did not need to present detailed arguments. He needed only to create a moment compelling enough to trigger response. Once that response arrived, the story wrote itself. In the end, whether Trump lost it depends on perspective. Some saw strength in fighting back, others saw vulnerability in escalating.